You're listening to The Gary Harris Show on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa.
And the battle over a revote request by the United Auto Workers Union at Mercedes-Benz facilities in Vance and Woodstock is heating up.
The Gary Harris Show. UCM host Tider Insider TV. Crimson Tide Kickoff. Play-by-play for Alabama sports and sports director for WVUA 23. It's time for the Gary Harris Show on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Morning, everybody. Let's do this. The TGIF edition of the Gary Harris Show. That's right. It's not just any Gary Harris Show. It's Friday. And you know how Justin and I love Fridays around here, man. We love to get ready for the weekend, and we love to do it in style. We got a great show coming up for you here today on the Big Tide 100.9 FM and 1230 AM WTBC. I'm going to tell you all about it in just a moment. Tell you how you can get in touch with us here on the Pinnacle Park and North River Hotline. But first, I want to tell you about my good friends at Alabama Credit Union. When I say good friends, I mean it. Steve Swafford, the CEO, the entire organization, they do it right. I'm a member. I would love for you to become a member too, because it's a lot better than a traditional banking institution. Again, member owned and not for profit. That matters. They're taking their profits and returning them to you, the member, in the form of lower interest rates and higher dividends. That's something we can all get excited about. Find out more at alabamacu.com. That's alabamacu.com, or get by and see them at one of their nearly 40 locations around the state of Alabama and the Panhandle of Florida. Alabama Credit Union, loans for real life. Some rules and restrictions do apply. See if you're eligible for membership and join today and feel good about your money. And put a little extra change in your pocket. All right, we're loaded today. 9:30, Adam Amin, Fox Sports, play-by-play broadcaster, baseball, football, MLB, NFL, also Chicago Bulls television voice, and does Chicago Bears preseason games. So he's connected when it comes to major professional sports in this country. We love having Adam on. We'll talk NBA playoffs. We'll talk Major League Baseball. We'll talk NFL. I'll ask him if he thinks Tua is going to get a deal done down in Miami, because it's looking more and more now like they may just let Tua play it out this year on his current contract. I'll ask Adam what he thinks about that. Then at 10 o'clock, David Kindred, former Alabama baseball player, former Alabama assistant coach, will break down the NCAA Tallahassee Regional, and we'll ask him what he thinks Alabama needs to do tonight against Central Florida. Obviously score more runs, but you know what I'm saying, to have a success in that game, because winning the first game, as we know, in an NCAA regional is critical. And then at 10:30, Ryan Fowler, our very own Ryan Fowler, host of the game here on Tide 100.9 FM and 1230 AM WTBC. He spent the week down at Sandestin at the SEC meetings. I know he's talked a lot about it on his show at 2 in the afternoon, but there's 5 hours between my show and his show, and I thought it'd be great to have him on, Justin, this morning to kind of tell us what he thought the major storylines that came out of SEC spring meetings were. And we'll have Ryan Fowler on with us. So you afternoon folks get a treat with the host of the game on with us at 10:30 this morning. As I said, your phone calls are welcome in this first hour on the Pinnacle Park at North River Hotline. Pinnacle Park, luxury townhomes near Lake Tuscaloosa. Find out more at pinnacleparknr.com. 205-342-9904. That's 205-342-9904 is the number. We'd love to hear from you. I see we've already got a caller ready to go. Corey, we're going to get to you in just a moment. But I do want to talk about some stories that are making news before we get to the phone calls. And, of course, Alabama softball. Yesterday, Justin, as we were talking about on our show, they couldn't even get to the first game without a weather delay. But they started at 12:36 p.m. after being scheduled for 11 a.m. This was a game that was tight all the way. It was 1-1. Alabama actually had a chance to take the lead in the fifth. Callie Hevelin had a bases loaded, solid single to right. Kinley Pate scored easily, but then Murph sent Callie Hevelin from second, and she was out by a mile. So it was 1-1 in the bottom of the sixth, 2 outs and 2 on, and it was one of those deals, one of those moments like Murph talks about. Can you get the big hit at the big time? And Kayla Beaver had been very, very good again in the circle for Alabama. Boy, she's been so good this year. And she's got 2 outs. So she gets out of the inning. We're going to go to the 7th, 1-1. Alabama's going to have a chance to take the lead. We're looking at the possibility of extra innings. Looking at a good chance for Alabama to win the game. Again, 2 outs. 2 out hitting in softball. And we know UCLA's got some powerful bats. Beaver had kept them at bay other than a run-scoring single. But sophomore first baseman Jordan Woolry got a pitch. It was a mistake. It was not where it needed to be. It was across the plate, about a little more than belt high, and she didn't miss it. And when a player with that kind of power gets a pitch that they can handle and they don't miss it and they put the barrel on it, there's a good chance it's going out of the ballpark. And it, Justin, you saw it. It was a no-doubter. It went to left field. It wasn't one of those where the glove was going up and it was 15 rows back. It was a shot.
It was a beautiful swing, and I hated that it was UCLA that got it and not Alabama.
So that was your ball game. Alabama went down 1-2-3 in the top of the 7th. They lose it 4-1. We do have the NCAA postgame press conference with Patrick Murphy, Caleb Beaver, and Dowling. Bailey Dowling was the other player. So I think who the other player was, the third baseman. We're going to have that for you. But it's a heartbreaker. But all you can do is come back and play tonight. And what you have to do is you have to win tonight or you're done. It's as simple as that. And probably if you had looked at the bracket and you were unbiased, most people would have predicted that we were going to have Alabama and Duke in that elimination game. And that's what we've got because Oklahoma, as expected, took care of Duke. And that's a winner's bracket now for UCLA and Oklahoma. They have the day off, but Alabama has to play, and they got to win tonight. Simple as that. It's a double elimination. You win, you live to play another day. It's very, very, very hard to come out of the loser's bracket when you lose that first game and make it deep. That's just the reality of it. It's one of the most difficult things to do in sports, but you still play until you lose again. And all you can focus on right now is winning that game tonight against the Duke Blue Devils. Duke got handled by Oklahoma, run ruled in that one, which again is no surprise. But for Alabama, obviously the matchup is better against Duke than it would have been against Oklahoma. Now the advantage is if you'd have won and played Oklahoma down the line, you've been in the winner's bracket. But let me say this: you're glad Oklahoma beat Duke. You would not want to be playing Oklahoma tonight in Oklahoma City in an elimination game. But Oklahoma took care of the Blue Devils 9-1. The other two games, Texas got an outstanding pitching performance from their freshmen. They shut out Stanford 4-0. And boy, Kilfoyle, the former Alabama pitcher, was dynamic for Oklahoma State, but she made one mistake. She gave up 2 hits. One of them was a solo home run. Again, the big hit. Florida beat Oklahoma State 1-0. So you've got Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, and UCLA advancing into the winner's bracket. Alabama plays Duke in an elimination game, and Stanford plays Oklahoma State in an elimination game. So we'll have 6 teams left after tonight, and 2 will go home. Hopefully it won't be Alabama. Bama baseball opens it up at 5 o'clock tonight down in the Tallahassee Regional against Central Florida. So we'll talk more about that with David Kindred. It's critical in a regional, too, to win that first game. Florida State's the favorite there, but somebody's going to make it to the final against probably Florida State. And if you lose that first game, you're going to be in trouble. You've got that going on. You've got NBA playoffs. Western Conference final goes to Dallas in 5 games. They blew out the T-Wolves last night. Really embarrassing performance by the T-Wolves at home, if you ask me. Talk more about that with Adam Amin. Braves are struggling right now. No Ronald Acuna Jr. The offense is just it's not there. Pitching's still pretty good. They lost last night at home to the Nats 3-1. So the Braves now are just 8 games over 500, 31-23. And not looking like a team that even with Acuna was playing offensively, I don't know what's going on with them, but they're not hitting. So love this story right here. Grant Nelson going to get to go home. Alabama. When I saw this, I was like everybody else, wow. But this is so cool to me. He played at North Dakota State. So obviously he probably didn't want to play his old school. So Alabama is going to play North Dakota in December. I think, what is it, December 18th or 19th? You got that in front of you there, Justin? They're going to play the University of North Dakota the Fighting Hawks. And for Alabama, a Final Four team from a year ago, going to be a top 3 preseason team this year. What a thrill for those people at North Dakota. But what a thrill for Grant Nelson and his family and his friends, too, for him to go home and get a chance to play. And he's playing against the team that would have been a natural rival for him when he was at North Dakota State. So that is going to be so cool. I'm happy for that. Justin's pulling up the exact date. I want to say it's December 18th or 19th. But shouldn't be that hard to find.
You would think so, and of course it's not the first thing that pops up here.
Well, I'll mention this too while you're getting that date. Alabama football, we mentioned this yesterday, but they're going to play South Florida, second game of the year at 6 o'clock Central Time on ESPN. So the first 2 games at home are both 6 o'clock kicks on ESPN. I love that, against Western Kentucky and against South Florida.
Yeah, December 18th.
December 18th. So that's pretty neat to me. Anyway, those are some stories that are making some headlines, and plenty more, of course, that we'll cover this morning. Can't wait to talk to Fowler about the SEC spring meetings. Can't wait to pick Adam Amin's brain. Coming up at 9:30, David Kindred on Bama baseball. All that's still ahead. When we come back on the other side, we'll jump out on the Pinnacle Park at North River hotline. Corey, you hold tight. You're going to lead us off in the next segment. It's 12 minutes after the hour, 9 o'clock. This is the TGIF edition of the Gary Harris Show, which also means all that weekend-themed music, upbeat, weekend-themed music to get you ready for.
That's 800-294-8831. What do you have to lose? Call 800-294-8831. Again, 800-294-8831.
As much as Innisfree has evolved, it will always be that place to escape and have a good time. Whether it's for a game day weekend, to reminisce on college days, or to create new memories, if you're looking for a good time, there's only one thing to do. Head to the Free at 1925 University Boulevard. And don't forget about the Lucky Lunch Meat and 3 special. Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. Get a meat and 3 vegetables for just $8.49. Or for a lighter appetite, try the Lucky Lunch soup, salad, or sandwich combo. I'll see you at the Free.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A big warm up today. The sky partly to mostly sunny, the high 89. Clouds move in tonight, the chance of a few showers, the low 69. Tomorrow, occasionally cloudy. A few showers and thunderstorms are likely during the day, the high at 83. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 75 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
You see him on WVUA 23 covering sports and on Tider Insider TV on Tuesday nights. Don't miss a minute of the Gary Harris Show. Weekdays from 9 to 11 on Tide 100.9.
Get your motor around. 9:16. Were you born to be wild? Well, if you're going to be wild, the weekend's the time to do it. Welcome back into the Gary Harris Show here on Tide 100.9 FM and 1230 AM WTBC. Gary Harris, Justin Jones. And we're going to jump out right now on the Pinnacle Park at North River hotline. And Corey is going to lead us off this morning, no doubt wanting to talk some Bama and Women's College World Series softball. Good morning, Corey.
Good morning, Gary. How are you this morning?
I'm doing pretty well, my friend.
Yesterday's result didn't really surprise me because if you look at the way the 8 teams are, Alabama's probably the 8th best team in the World Series. I would say UCLA is probably 5 or 6 best. So by saying that probably means UCLA was supposed to win by most people. And UCLA, I think, has better players than Alabama. But Alabama did everything they could. I mean, you had a tie game going to 6, and like Robbie said, one swing changed it. And I mean, most people probably thought this game probably been a 5-1 or 6-1 game because UCLA had more talent, and you just made one pitching mistake, and that's all it takes in this type of setup. And I give Alabama a lot of credit. They played, like I said, they played really well, and I think I don't know who Alabama would play next if they beat Duke, but I think this Duke game should be a good matchup for Alabama because both teams are pretty similar. I mean, I know Duke has a little more home run hitting power, but I think Alabama can go toe-to-toe with their pitching, and I think Alabama can squeeze out a win here. If we play like we did yesterday and just don't give up the big hit, I think Alabama can squeeze out a win.
Yeah, I expect Alabama to win the game tonight. I think they're going to beat Duke. And getting back to the UCLA game, for the most part, I agree with you. I I don't know that I expected it to be 5-1 or 6-1, simply because when Caleb Beaver's in the circle, I expect Alabama pitching wise to have a chance, and they did. And you're right on the fact that it came down to the one big hit. It was 1-1. You could argue to that point that Alabama had outplayed UCLA. Alabama had more scoring opportunities, got a player thrown out at the plate, had 6 hits to that point. I think going into the sixth inning, I think UCLA maybe had 2 hits. And but they got 2 on. She got it to 2 outs, but then she made a mistake, and Woolery made her pay. And that's what you're right. That's what those big bats do, and that's the thing that Alabama's been lacking this year. And they got a couple big home runs. Don't get me wrong, in the regional and certainly the Grand Slam and the Super against Tennessee. But for the most part, Alabama hasn't been able to make teams pay enough. They've not gotten enough home runs. So it's one thing if you get a single in that situation and you score 1 versus getting a 3-run home run. And, Alabama with only 1 at bat left, once they got that 3-run cushion, we knew the game was over. But I thought Kayla Beaver was terrific, but she made a mistake there. And, you just can't, in that situation, you can't miss. You just, even if you walk her, bases are loaded, but they're still not a run in, you still get a chance to get an out. But when you put it out over the plate like that, and there wasn't a lot of movement on that pitch, it was not a good pitch, and she didn't miss it. And like I said, with a player that kind of power barrels it up, it's going out of the ballpark. So it's disappointing from the standpoint that I thought Alabama was right there, even Steven, with them the entire game until UCLA's last at bat, and you lose it that way. But that's the way it goes. Like you said, in softball, you look at Florida and Oklahoma State, both teams had 4 hits combined, 2 hits apiece. The difference was that Florida's one of their hits was a home run, and that was the game, 1-0. So, but Corey, tonight, I like your assessment. I think Alabama's going to beat Duke, and I think they're going to beat Duke, and I think they're going to live to play another day. Which is good, because you don't want to go out there and go 2 and done. It's one thing to get there, but once you get there, you at least want to win a game or 2. You don't want to be 2 games and out. But that's what they're playing for tonight. Oklahoma, just like we expected, manhandled Duke. So we'll see what happens tonight. But I think Alabama's going to throw Brisky, and I think they're going to win the game.
Would you think about throwing Beaver because she only threw 68 pitches yesterday?
No, I think he's going to come back with Brisky, because I think he's got confidence in Brisky. And then I think he has Beaver if he needs her. But, yeah, you spoke to the efficiency that Beaver had in that game. To only throw 68 pitches, she was so good yesterday. But I think they'll come back with Brisky tonight, and then you got Beaver available if you need her. But I think that the key, again, will be offense, like it is for Alabama. I think the pitching will be good enough tonight. It's whether or not they can score some runs. And that's the challenge for them every time that they go out there. That's the challenge.
If Alabama was to go 0-2, would it be a major disappointment, just the fact that they were riding this momentum going into Oklahoma City, just to go 2-0? I think that would just be a major
Yes and no. Yes and no. Okay. Yes, it would be a disappointment in that once they got there, it'd be disappointing if they go 0-2. But the season is already a success based on the fact that they got there with a team that I still say, I wasn't wrong in my analysis. During the SEC schedule, this did not look like a Women's College World Series team. So if they go 0-2, you're disappointed in not winning a game, but you can't be disappointed in how the season finished based on the fact that you went into Knoxville and you won a NCAA Super Regional against one of your biggest rivals, a team that won the SEC regular season championship and had basically had their entire roster back from a World Series team the year before. So you can't be disappointed in the final outcome. I think making it to the WCWS was a victory, but you can be disappointed in that they're already coming home. So that's the way I answer that question. But I think they're going to win tonight. I do.
I agree, but like I said, Alabama was probably the 8th best team coming into the field. So, like I said, it wouldn't be a surprise. Although I do think Alabama beats Duke, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama wins by 3 or 4 runs. Because yes, Duke is a really good team, but I just think Alabama has. I know you see Duke as this is only their 7th year in the program, but I think Alabama believe it or not, actually has more talented players than Duke, if you think about it.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that. And you were asking about the bracket. This is how it works for Alabama if they win. If they lose, they go home. But if they win, they're off tomorrow, because then you have today you have the 2 losers bracket games. Tomorrow you have the 2 winners brackets game, and they're in the bracket with UCLA and Oklahoma. So if Alabama wins tonight, then UCLA and Oklahoma play tomorrow. The loser of that game then plays Alabama on Sunday in another elimination game. Same thing in the other bracket. You've got Oklahoma State and Stanford playing tonight. The winner of that game moves on to Sunday. Texas and Florida play tomorrow. The loser of that game plays on Sunday. So obviously winning the first 2 games is just huge, because
Alabama could play UCLA again.
They could. Yes, they could. If they beat Duke, well, they're going to either play UCLA or Oklahoma. So, all right, check that. Let me hang on a second. They might flip I might have confused myself here, because they flipped the bracket. So let me make sure I'm right here. They're going to play against one of the losers from tomorrow, but it may be, these brackets, they're hard to figure out. They may play, let's see, Alabama, if they win, moves to Sunday, and then they would play the loser of Game 8. I'm sorry, let me correct myself, because they flipped the brackets. They would play the loser of Game 8, which is Texas and Florida. I'm sorry. So if Alabama wins on Sunday, they will play in another elimination game, but they'll play the Texas-Florida loser, and then the UCLA-Oklahoma loser would play the Stanford-Oklahoma State winner. So there you go.
If Alabama beats Duke, who would be the better matchup to play, Texas or Florida, in your opinion? I mean, they're all good. Don't get me wrong, but
I would rather see them play Florida, just because of the familiarity there, and Texas is the number 1 overall seed for a reason. They earned it. So I mean, they're both those. Listen, I think Texas and Florida both are going to be tough for Alabama, but I would rather play Florida, given a choice. But, that's all going to be dictated by who wins that game. So bottom line is Alabama needs to win tonight. But I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad I got that straight, because I forgot that they flipped the bracket. So, yeah, Alabama, if they win, they'll play Sunday in an elimination game. It'll be against the Texas-Florida loser. Then the UCLA-Oklahoma loser would play the Stanford-Oklahoma State winner. So there we go. Got that straight.
I know we can't predict this until we see it, but which championship game do you think would garner you the most interest, to either give Oklahoma a chance to push it to Game 3, or just a good viewing championship?
Well, I think it's just on paper. I think the best championship game for the Women's College World Series would be Oklahoma versus Texas. I mean, they finished 1-2 in the Big 12. They're both coming into the SEC. Texas won the regular season series against Oklahoma. So I think that's the best game on paper. If it worked out that way. Of course, again, trying to follow this bracket is so confusing. I don't know if that could, be the way they flip them, but just between the 8 teams, I think that would be an ideal final. But any of these matchups would be good. I mean, all 8 teams earned their way here. You had to win a regional and a super regional. So, but I think that, don't sleep on Florida. I mean, that beating Oklahoma State was huge for them. Huge for them. And, they've got a chance against Texas. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked that Oklahoma State lost to Florida. I mean, I didn't see the game last night, but just looking this morning, I thought Oklahoma State, they had the complete offense, defense, and I thought they would have won. And
well, both teams had 2 hits in the game. Like I said, the difference was one of Florida's hits went over the fence, and that was your ball game, 1-0. So that's so often is the case in softball, Corey, like we talked about. And Murph's right. Sometimes it's just one hit. And that was the difference. That was the difference in that game. So big win for Florida. Hey, I got to get to the break, man. But so you and I are both picking Bama tonight over Duke. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll talk to you on Monday, and we'll know by then, obviously where we stand, with Alabama and with a lot of these teams. We'll have a much better idea on Monday as we get ready for the semifinals. All right, buddy.
Good talk to you, Gary.
For 3K PF 5480X RE771137. Julio Jones Kia at 4301 Greensboro Avenue, Tuscaloosa, or 24/7 at buyfromjulio.com.
Follow Tide 100.9 on Facebook today to watch our live shows, read the great articles, and interact with Bama fans today.
.30, welcome back into the Gary Harris Show. This TGIF edition for Friday, May 31, 2024 rolls on, and it's our pleasure to welcome in talented play-by-play broadcaster for Fox Sports, Adam Amin. He does Major League Baseball, he does NFL football, he does Chicago Bulls, NBA basketball, Chicago Bears preseason games, and we love having him on and kind of picking his brain on the professional sports scene. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Doing great. Let's jump right in with the NBA. We'll get to the Celtics-Mavs preview in a moment for the NBA Finals, but let's start in the Western Conference Finals because it got pushed to 5 games. I say pushed to 5 games because the T-Wolves were down 3-0, but they showed a lot of fight in Game 4, winning in Dallas. And quite frankly, I was just like a lot of people that tried to, I had it on at work, but tuned in to watch that game. And it was basically over at the end of the first quarter when Luka outscored the T-Wolves by themselves. I just got the feeling watching the game, Adam, I'm curious what you think, that I hate to use the term happy to be there, but it seemed like the T-Wolves were almost satisfied that they got Game 4 and didn't get swept. And to come out at home and not put forth a better effort, I was very disappointed in that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to kind of jump on the T-Wolves. They're a young team. Or at least the superstars of that team are a little younger. And even guys like Rudy Gobert, who've been around for a while, they're still relatively young. And this is about as deep of a postseason run as any of those guys have had. So I hate putting that on, that kind of mentality on a team based off of a series to say, oh, well, they were just happy to be there. But I do think there was something to that in the sense of like, well, this is brand new and this is the first time. It's very rare for young players in their first playoff run to have full success for a full playoff, right? To get to the NBA Finals. And I always think back to LeBron in 2007 when they had their first real run. And LeBron, I think, was only about 22 or 23 years old at that point. And that's when he had the 48 special against Detroit. And in the conference finals, he was basically carrying, I think at one point he scored 25 consecutive points for Cleveland and just completely took over in what I think is one of the great playoff performances of this century. And, he took a team that probably didn't have a whole lot of business being that deep in the playoffs all the way to the NBA Finals. Now, granted, they got swept by San Antonio I can't remember if it was the second or third title now for San Antonio, but, they got swept by the Spurs. And everybody just kind of felt like, all right, well, that's the first one. That's the first deep run that this guy's going to make. And that's kind of how I feel. I'm not saying that's how it's going to be, but that's how I feel about Anthony Edwards right now. I feel like this will be the first time that he really gets to make a deep run and kind of sees, what it takes to get further than this point, right? Luka's dealt with it. He's dealt with getting eliminated in disappointing fashion at times in his career. A lot of these guys, for a young Derek Lively is in his early 20s, Derek Jones Jr., Daniel Gafford, P.J. Washington, guys who are cast-offs basically from other teams. This is their first time making a really significant deep run like this. So for a lot of these players, I think it's brand new. And I do think that for Minnesota, I feel like this is the start of something, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be any easier. I think that's the lesson you try to take out of this when you're a young team, that, hey, this is hard, man. Like, to win 16 games, to win an NBA championship is really hard when you have to play the same teams over and over and you have to make constant adjustments. And obviously when you get to this point of the year, the players are the best in the world. So I don't necessarily want to say like, well, they were just happy to be there and they didn't want to put in effort. I don't think they clicked much in this series like they did in the first 2 rounds. I think Anthony Edwards said as much, but I think that's more of a function of just how good offensively Dallas has been in the postseason and how good Doncic and Kyrie Irving have been together. Yeah,
they have been. And you're right. Dallas has got some other good parts. There's no doubt about it. But Kyrie and Luka have been dominant as a tandem. And now you get that dynamic duo, which might be the best 1-2 combo in the league right now against, I think, the team that is the best team in the league, in the Boston Celtics. Sure. And Boston's deep. might get Porzingis back in this series. I'll ask you if you think he's going to be able to come back and play next week in Game 1 because they don't play until Thursday. And this matchup is very interesting. I think we expected Boston to be there. I didn't think Dallas would be playing for the NBA championship, but they are, and they appear to be the best team out of the West, going through the teams that they went through to get here. So I think we got a matchup here that could go 6 or 7 games. How do you see it?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a 6 or 7 game series. I think the matchup in terms of positional play is very similar. Porzingis seemingly hasn't had any setbacks, so I guess the expectation is he's going to be ready to go. And yeah, it's such a long wait. The finals were going to start June 6th, no matter what. For the TV windows, which again, you're getting really deep. It feels like into June. Although maybe it's just my recency bias because I spent a lot of Junes, growing up in Chicago. I spent a lot of Junes the first couple of weeks of June watching the NBA finals. It just feels like it's been a lot more spread out over the last 10 years, the finals themselves. But anyway, yeah, I feel like Porzingis should be back, based off no setbacks. I really like this matchup. I think, like you said, Boston's the best team. I think they were the deepest team. I think when you can get contributions like they get from players that you're not putting on the first 2 or 3 lines of your scouting report, like a Derek White or a Peyton Pritchard, I think that makes you a really dangerous team. And I think defensively, this will be the toughest test for Dallas. It'll certainly be a tough test for Boston, obviously. Like, guarding Kyrie is a task in and of itself, and I imagine that Drew Holiday will get a good share of guarding Kyrie Irving because of the size similarities and how good of a defensive guard Drew Holiday has been in his career. I mean, you saw how he disrupted Indiana very consistently in that conference finals series, just really took them out of a lot of actions that they wanted to get into, and they just really couldn't. And he helped Boston keep the pace down in a couple of those games where Indiana was trying to push it. So this will be the best test, the toughest test by far for Boston. But for Dallas as well, they're going to throw multiple bodies at Luka. He might have the biggest advantage because Kyrie takes up so much breathing room for a defense, right? Holiday is going to have so much focus on Irving. They're going to do everything they can to get Holiday off of Kyrie in their pick and roll actions. I'll be curious to see how they do it. Does Luka feel comfortable having Drew Holiday on him? Because I think people forget how big Luka Doncic is. He's all of 6'7", 6'8", and a pretty stocky guy.
Right.
And I'll be curious to see, because I don't, Tatum takes a lot of pride in defense. I don't think he's as good a defender as some other players at his position in the league. Jaylen Brown always plays tough defense, and he's got a little bit more size. He's going to have some tasks defensively to try to guard Luka. And I think the key here is, what does that do to Boston on the offensive end? Because the reason this is their toughest test is not only because of what they're going to have to do defensively, but are they going to have the energy at the other end of the floor? And I know they're going to want to pace the game down. I know they're going to want to try to play at a slower pace to try to force Dallas to grind out possession after possession. They're going to want, you're going to give up points. You're going to give up 40 to, on a good night, you're going to give up 40 points to Kyrie and Luka if you're having a good defensive night. If you have a bad defensive night or they're having a great offensive night, I mean, that's 70 points potentially that you're looking at. So, to keep them closer to 40 or 50 a night, you're going to have to force longer shots because Kyrie is one of the best in the business at getting to the rim. And if Luka gets downhill, then you're setting up Daniel Gafford and Jones and Kleba and all these other guys around the rim for easy baskets. So I think those are the things that kind of stick out, just thinking about the machinations of where these teams are at right now. And yeah, Porzingis is healthy. That adds another element because I don't think, Towns didn't have a great series shooting the ball for Minnesota against Dallas. How Porzingis shoots will be a factor as well for Boston, depending on if he's doing anything from the perimeter to try to stretch that defense.
So, Adam, ultimately, who do you like to win the NBA championship?
I think this is Dallas's time, man.
Really?
I just feel like there's such a tough matchup on defense for Boston. And I love Drew Holiday. I think Drew Holiday might be the most undervalued player and underrated player that we have in the NBA as in terms of a two-way player. And I know a lot of people have maybe said that over the last couple of years because he's been part of championship teams in Milwaukee and teams that have made a deep playoff run, and he's been such a contributor here. But, outside of that, I have some concerns. I feel like the size of Luka and the ability of Kyrie Irving is just very tough to contend with. But I don't think this is going to be a short series. I'm with you, Gary. I think this is a 6 or 7 game series.
Well, our listeners that like to wager are running out and putting their money on the Mavs because I have been terrible at picking these NBA playoffs, and I like the Celtics, and you've been good, and you like the Mavs. So go Mavs if you're listening. Don't go with my pick. I've been horrible. I mean, I've about misfired on every series that I like the Clippers to beat the Mavs in the opening round. So, and you remember I picked the Suns over the T-Wolves. So, there we go. I want to talk a little NFL with you because I'm interested in what's happening with the Dolphins. They're all in on this offense. There's no doubt about it. They signed Waddle to a new contract yesterday. He's waddling all the way to the bank with a mega deal, $76 million guaranteed. They brought in OBJ. They got Tyreek locked up. They got the 2 running backs. They've got, pretty good offensive line, and they've got the quarterback in Tua. But this has gone from looking like it was a surefire deal for Tua to get a new contract to now reading some stuff yesterday morning from some Miami beat writers that they feel like the Dolphins might ride it through this year and see what happens and whether to try to re-sign him after the season or if it doesn't go the way they want it to go this year, which is a Super Bowl, maybe move on. What are you thinking with Miami and Tua in that situation with this offense that on paper is about as dynamic as you're going to find in the National Football League?
Yeah, I think it has more to do with just the timeline because Tua's in year number 5 now, right? And this is the chance you get to not have to pay an exorbitant amount of money. I think his club option, every quarterback. So, and I'm sure most people know this, but for every quarterback that gets drafted at a high level, you get a 4-year contract with a 5th-year team option.
That's right.
Right, and the 4-year deal is typically, right around this time. I think it's worth somewhere around $30 million, something like that for 4 years. Which at this point in the NFL, when salaries have skyrocketed, that's the only time you're going to get a reasonable number for your quarterback,
club friendly,
for a high level quarterback, right? That's the only team friendly period you get. And then once you get to 5th year, it's going to be about 20 to 25 million, depending on the quarterback, maybe 30, something like that. But usually around 20 to 25 million, and that's what Tua is getting paid. I think it's like 22 or 23. So this is the last year you get where you don't have to pay premium money for a quarterback. Now, if Tua has a great year, it's going to be beneficial for both sides because, that means that Miami had a good year. He's probably going to want to stay. And he seems like the type of kid that, if he's in a good situation, he seems like a loyal kid. He seems happy where he's at. And they seem to like him a whole lot. I don't think it has much to do with how they feel about Tua. I just think that this is the last chance you get at being able to pay somebody like Jalen Waddle, being able to extend him, being able to extend guys on that defense, and being able to bring in a free agent contract like an OBJ, paying those running backs without having to pay an exorbitant amount for your quarterback. So I think it has more to do with the timing than anything else. And this is the risk that you run because if he has a huge year, well, you're going to pay him, $150 million guaranteed deal, any 160, 180, whatever the number is going to end up being. I always use Daniel Jones as kind of a barometer, right? The guy who got paid $160 million for winning one playoff game, and if Tua gets this team and wins to the playoffs and wins a playoff game or two, that's going to be a $200 million quarterback you're probably looking at that point based off of what a 20-game run, 17 games in the regular season and maybe, a couple playoff games or whatever it may be, 18, 19, 20 games, you're going to go, well, this guy's definitely worth the $200 million that he's going to demand at this point. So I think it has more to do with that than anything else. I don't think it should be indicative of how they feel about Tua. I think it's more indicative of they're trying to spend that money in other areas while they still have the 1-year window to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%, Adam. I thought the same thing. I had read all spring, because now the big thing is about showing confidence in your quarterback and that they were going to get the deal done this summer. But I'm with you. If he has a great year and the team has a great year, it's going to be worth paying him anyway. And if something happened, it didn't go that way and it fell apart, then you could, if you wanted to, move on from him after next season. So I'm with you. I just, based on what I'd read all year, it was one of those things where they want to, show their confidence in Tua, and they're going to sign him to a long-term contract before the final year of his deal. But I'm with you. I think it makes sense to do it the way that they're doing it. MLB, and I know I'd asked you about the Braves last week, but this team is struggling, and I know there's still 8 games over 500, but Noah Acuna Jr., they were struggling offensively before that. The pitching, even without Strider, pitching's been pretty good. I mean, they got beat last night 3-1 by the Nats, but offensively, this was a team last year that just raked. Even without Acuna Jr., there seemed to be enough bats in that lineup, but other than Ozuna, they're struggling. They're struggling to hit home runs, which is really shocking to me. What are you making of the Braves' offensive woes so far this season?
Yeah. Number one home run hitting team, number one OPS last year, and they're really not at that point right now, right? And obviously the Acuna loss is huge, but this is what the depth of Atlanta. This is why you've signed these guys to long-term contracts. But this is not 2 big injuries. The Acuna injury is one thing. Obviously they won a World Series without him a few years back, but the Spencer Strider injury, early in the season really hurt. I know Fried has pitched great. Chris Sale's pitching great. Credit to Ronaldo Lopez. They've pitched really, really well. They got this Schwellenbach kid that they're expecting big things from at various points in the season. But this is when the depth gets tested, right? I think in that 21 season, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's when Alex Anthopoulos, brought in Jorge Soler, and that's when he got, Jock Peterson and Adam Duvall and Eddie Rosario. Like he did a great job of kind of filling in Acuna's production in the aggregate. You're not going to be able to make up for Acuna's loss with one player. And again, I'm talking about, peak level Acuna. Obviously, he hit just 4 home runs this year, and, he wasn't stealing bases at the same rate. He wasn't getting on base at the same rate that he has been in, especially considering the amazing year he had last year, the 40-70 year. But I feel like Alex Anthopoulos did a really good job of kind of filling that in the aggregate. He's going to have to make a deal at some point. What's nice is that he's got most of those key pieces, most of that starting lineup under contract. So you're going to have to look into the pipeline at this point to try to make a move. And you're going to have to get some outfield help or maybe some DH help before the trade deadline. You got 2 months now to really kind of figure out where you're at, how healthy you're going to be, who your contributing players are, and who you can go out and get. And the New York Mets don't look good right now, right? The name JD Martinez is sticking out in my head. I'd take a flyer on somebody like a JD Martinez who's starting to hit a little bit better. He's had a couple of home runs in the last week or so. 36. He's on a 1-year, very friendly deal with the Mets. Why not take a flyer on somebody like that and be able to move some pieces around to try to get, like a veteran hitter like that to slide into a DH, and obviously you fill in on the back end on the defensive side. I think it's going to have to take a move like that to get back to some semblance of offensive consistency, and maybe more, not even consistency, but just a little bit more power. But I think there's still room. It's probably not going to be the division winner. I think Philadelphia's just been really, really good. They've been too good. That doesn't mean the division's not going to come down to it. This has been typical of the NL East the last couple of seasons, right? Whether it was New York collapsing a couple of years ago, whether it's Philly down to the wire against Atlanta, that doesn't mean to say that Atlanta's not going to make a run and that Philly can't slow down a little bit. So, we still got a long way to go, but I think it's going to take a big time move for New York, for Atlanta, looking around, maybe even in their own division, to try to get back to some kind of pop offensively.
Couple more minutes with Adam Amin from Fox Sports. Since you mentioned the Mets and all that money with Cohen, the owner, and yet still, I still have not seen a plan. I mean, they threw a lot of money at big name players. Now they've been miserable, and I give them credit. They actually came back and won a game last night. And but in May they've been abysmal. And then you add in, what's happening, the locker room dynamic. Jorge Lopez melting down. What do you make of this Mets team? And can they turn it around and put themselves in playoff contention, or are they already a lost cause? How do you see it?
I mean, the morale in that clubhouse is so low right now between the Jorge Lopez incident and how bad the bullpen was in May. Diaz was brutal, and now he's injured. Lindor's been bad, for what you're paying him. Pete Alonso, who's how about that? Maybe is that a move that Atlanta's willing to make?
Maybe so.
Maybe into a DH spot for Pena, or give Matt Olson a couple of days off. I don't know. But Alonso hasn't been his normal self. Brandon Nimmo at the top of that lineup has been very hit or miss. Kodai Senga, who was number 2 in the Rookie of the Year vote last year, still hasn't pitched. Their best players have been bad, relative to what they should expect from them, and for some of the guys what they're getting paid. It's been a rough season. So I don't know when these guys all turn it around. Is it going to all happen at once? I think there's always a tendency with players of this caliber to have a great month, right? Whether it's this month, maybe it's July, maybe it's after the All-Star break, before you get to the end of July and get in towards trade deadline time. There always seems to be like a 3 or 4 week stretch for teams like this that have quality, high caliber star players that it all clicks. But is David Stearns going to be willing to pull the trigger on getting rid of some of these guys to try to build for the future, which is a tough prospect in New York because of what you talked about, Gary? Like Steve Cohen spending all this money to win now, and their closest shot came 2 years ago, and they got eliminated by the Padres in the first round. So I don't know where this team is at. Cohen's honeymoon phase is certainly over, it feels like, and he doesn't seem like the type of guy who's going to be very pleased with a rebuild. David Stearns is getting paid a lot of money to run that team, and there's a lot of concern for where the Mets are at right now, because just like the Yankees, Brian Cashman came out and said it for them, and Steve Cohen has kind of said as much as well. They didn't spend a lot of money in this offseason, even though they have a huge payroll. I think it's still the second or third biggest payroll. They didn't spend a lot of money this offseason. Like I said, JD Martinez was a 1-year, like $13 million deal. That was about as splashy as they got. So whether it's lack of spending money this offseason or, still having the huge payroll, I don't know where this front office and where this ownership group is going to be in terms of being okay with getting into a rebuild process. If Steve Cohen is the Mets fan that he says he is, then maybe he's willing to do it. But if he's the businessman that I think he is, then he's not going to be very pleased about having to, go into a fire sale territory.
Who's your MLB assignment this weekend, Adam?
I get to stay home this weekend, man. It's Cubs, Reds. Both teams struggling, unfortunately. We just saw the Cardinals beat the Cubs last weekend, and the Cardinals are red hot. They're in second place now behind Milwaukee. But we get Ellie De La Cruz for a game, and we get a good pitching matchup with Hunter Green and Justin Steele. And then I'll miss you next week, Eric, because I'll be in London. We've got Mets and Phillies coming up next week. All right,
yeah, you're going across the pond. All right, good. I already make a note of that. Real quickly, because we're up against it, but before you were at Fox, of course, you did a lot of big college events for ESPN, including the Women's College World Series. Alabama somehow made it back. For a lot of people that are just getting introduced to it, softball's taken off. I think I eat people all the time that, man, alive, it just came down to one hit. That's, as you know, that's often the case. I look at yesterday, Alabama and UCLA, 1-1 in the bottom of the sixth, 2 outs, and Jordan Woolry hits a 3-run shot to decide the game. Florida and Oklahoma State, Kilfoyle's doing her thing for OSU. They've got 4 hits between them, but one of Florida's went over the fence. They won 1-0. Now, Oklahoma, took care of Duke, but you did it in a minute. A lot of people are getting turned on to softball, and so often in these games at this level, it comes down to one pitch or one big hit or an error or something. A lot of these games are decided this way. Adam, you did it for 5 years. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
It's one of my favorite events that I've ever covered. And, whether it's Kavan for Texas throwing a one-hit shutout yesterday with, an incredibly exciting moment, with Duke going to the World Series for the first time, what Caleb Beaver's done has been awesome. It's a great staff. It does come down to that because you're facing the best pitchers in the country now at this point, and typically these are the best offenses. So it's so much pitch to pitch to pitch to pitch to pitch execution. And there's not a lot of room for error because the offenses are so good across the board. and the number one pitchers that you see, and oftentimes, like I said, for Bama, number 2 is pretty good too, right? It was Brisky.
Johnson Brisky. Mm-hmm.
Number 2. Like the 1s and 2s, especially the 1s, are just so good at this point of the season. And the execution that it takes to make sure you don't give up the one big pitch is incredible. One of the last games, in fact, the last game I ever did there was UCLA-Washington. That was 0-0 going to the 10th inning.
Yep.
And that's the type of white knuckle, hold on to the edge of your chair type of games that you typically get. And we've seen a lot of that already so far.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Great stuff, Adam.
A rate based on you. Not available in every state, subject to terms and conditions. Rating factors and savings vary, and in some states your rate could increase with high-risk driving. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
You're listening to The Gary Harris Show.
Goal line in, touchdown, Alabama.
On your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9. And streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
All right. First hour getaway song, The Cure, Friday, I'm in Love. We certainly love Fridays here on the Gary Harris Show. Good first hour. Appreciate Adam Amin. Always fun to pick his brain from Fox Sports. Hour number 2, David Kindred on Alabama baseball, the Tallahassee NCAA Regional. Ryan Fowler from the Game on his trip down to Sandestin for the SEC meetings. We'll also hear from Patrick Murphy and the softball players following their loss yesterday to UCLA. More of your phone calls as well. This hour has been brought to you by Alabama Credit Union. Another hour of the Gary Harris Show still to come on Tide 100.9 FM and 1230 AM WTBC.
I don't care about you, it's Friday.
Go to drmartypets.com/deal or text DEAL to 511-511. Text DEAL to 511-511. All dogs are unique. Your dog's results can and will vary. Message and data rates may apply.
Since 2011, Billy's Sports Grill, located on Main Avenue in historic downtown Northport, has been serving their legendary signature chicken sandwich, award-winning wings, and handcrafted cocktails. Billy's is also the spot to watch all your favorite sporting events with big screen, high-definition televisions, both dining rooms, at the bar, and outside on the beautiful patio. Come by and say hello to Kim and Lisa, the Billy's Management Dream Team. Billy's, good food, good friends, and good time.
WTBC Tuscaloosa and W265CG Tuscaloosa, a Town Square media station. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
From the Fox Sports Studios in Los Angeles, here's Kevin Wyatt.
NBA playoffs, the Dallas Mavericks take down the Timberwolves in a game 5, 124-103 to win the best-of-7 series in 5 games. Luka Doncic, an outstanding game. In the first quarter, he outscored the entire Timberwolves team 20-19. Finished the game with 36 points. So did Kyrie Irving. And now the Mavericks off to the NBA Finals for the third time in franchise history. Game 1 against the Celtics in Boston will begin on Thursday. In the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, Eastern Conference Finals, Panthers beat the Rangers at Madison Square Garden 3-2 to take a 3-2 series lead as the Rangers now on the verge of elimination. Major League Baseball, Yankees beat the Angels 8-3. Aaron Judge career home run 275 in the win. Mets over the Diamondbacks 3-2. Zach Gallen left with a hamstring injury after just 6 pitches.
Now, this hour's West Alabama real-time news update from the Tuscaloosa Thread Newsroom.
Good morning. I'm Mary Kay from the Town Square Media Newsroom. And former Alabama tackle and current Kansas City Chief Isaiah Buggs was officially charged with 2 counts of second-degree animal cruelty. For more on this developing story, log on to TuscaloosaThread.com. And West and Central Alabama are under a marginal risk for severe weather on Saturday between noon and 9, with a threat of damaging winds and localized flooding. And the battle over a revote request by the United Auto Workers Union at Mercedes-Benz facilities in Vance and Woodstock is heating up.
Get 24/7 local news coverage and sports updates when you download the free Tuscaloosa Thread app and sign up for twice daily email newsletters. The Gary Harris Show. UCM host Tider Insider TV, Crimson Tide Kickoff, play-by-play for Alabama sports, and sports director for WVUA 23. It's time for the Gary Harris Show on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
All right, here we go. Hour number 2, the TGIF edition of the Gary Harris Show for this Friday, May 31, 2024. Gary Harris, Justin Jones with you for another hour. This hour of the program being brought to you, as always, by Patterson Comer, attorneys at law. If you need a personal injury attorney, I really recommend very highly that you call Patterson Comer. Patterson Comer is right here in West Alabama with feet on the ground. I think that's important. Paul's in Tuscaloosa. You can reach him at 205-345-1000. Paul Patterson. Mike Comer's in Northport. You can reach Mike at 205-759-3939. If you need a law firm to represent you with a automobile accident, personal injury, wrongful death, product liability, or 18-wheeler accident, or any other legal questions that you may have, I encourage you to get in touch with Patterson Comer. The commitment to serve our clients does not stop at the end of the workday. We're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PattersonComerLawFirm.com.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of services performed by other lawyers.
And we're going to start this second hour by jumping out on the Krispy Kreme Donuts hotline and welcoming our friend David Kindred, former Alabama and Ole Miss baseball player, former Alabama assistant coach, now a analyst for SEC baseball on the SEC Network Plus, and joins us from time to time to break it all down ahead of this Alabama appearance in the NCAA Tallahassee Regional. We wanted to get David on to talk about what's up this weekend. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad we're talking about a little baseball postseason play.
Absolutely. And Bama's the 2 seed, which I was surprised. I thought they'd be 3. Not that it matters that much, although they will get the last at bat today. FSU is the number 1 seed there at home in the Tallahassee Regional at Dick Howser Stadium. Alabama the 2 seed, Central Florida the 3 seed, and Stetson the 4 seed. So it's a good field, but it's a regional field. Alabama was able to bust down there, playing 3 teams from the state of Florida. 5 o'clock today, they get Central Florida. Florida State and Stetson will play the first game, and you've been through it. I don't have to tell you how important this first game is. It's critical to have a chance. It's been done where people have lost the first game and won a regional, but it's very hard. So you've got Greg Ferrone towing the rubber for Alabama this evening against a really good UCF team. How big is this game, and what does Alabama need to do? Obviously, score more runs, but outside of that, how do they go about scoring more runs and giving themselves an opportunity to win this first big game against the Golden Knights team that's really good?
Yes, it's as you said, Gary. I thought it was a fair regional for Alabama to get in. If you looked at their whole body of work, very strong strength of schedule, and I think that they interviewed Coach Rob Vaughn early in the week, and they asked him the same question as you're asking me. Hey, talk a little bit about a breakdown where he thought the seating was, and he just said, "Hey, I'm just happy our route to continue play doesn't have to go through an SEC team." And that's no slight on any other team other than I think it's a fresh face. You, for the most part. Now, I will say Florida State and Alabama did match up early in an exhibition game in the fall. So they have a little bit of understanding of each other. But, again, I think this is a very fair and reasonable series for Alabama. And don't mistake it. This is a very strong field. Like you said, all 3 teams coming from Florida. But today, as you said, they're facing off against Central Florida, which Central Florida, out of the Big 12, they got an at-large bid. And if you look at their stats, there's anything that, blows you away with overly offensive or any dominant arm. They're just a team that doesn't make a lot of mistakes, older group. They're probably going to roll out a senior tonight in Ben Vespi. He's a senior, been there for a long time. And Central Florida is a little bit different in how their approach to pitching is. They have a guy in the back end, Dominic Castellano, who's kind of been their ace in the hole. Few starts, but he's got the most appearances. If they have the lead in the 4th or 5th inning, they're going to this guy and riding him all the way to the end. But back to the offense, it's really not a very overly offensive club, but they play baseball the right way. And Rick Wallace, who's been there in his first year, but his alma mater. So Central Florida is going to be a very strong group. They beat teams like Oklahoma State. Very good conference out of the Big 12. But as you said, they're starting Greg Ferrone tonight. I think that's the right call. I think you go with, in Alabama's opinion, of their Friday night ace and Greg Ferrone. you look at his last two starts, not that great, coming off of Auburn and South Carolina. But again, to his credit, to South Carolina, that was a short stint start for him. And I think the rest has been good for the pitchers. Alabama waited over a week as they were waiting for. Unfortunately got bounced in the first round of the SEC tournament. But I think the rest has been good for the pitchers. And I will say, as a former hitter, you don't like to rest. I mean, these days you don't. After 2 days, you don't take BP or hit. You start to get a little rusty. But I think there wasn't any hitter for Alabama that was just lighting it up. So I feel like this is a new season, a new script, and Alabama needs to come ready to play tonight against Central Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you get this one, you get off to a good start. Obviously, Florida State's the favorite. They're hosting. They're the number one seed in the regional at their place and a national seed overall. But Alabama, we know, played in the SEC. They were competitive in every series they played. Is it reasonable to think that Alabama has a chance to win this thing, David?
They do. Obviously, you got to take care of, got to get the win against Central Florida, and it'll be very interesting to see. Now, I don't know if this is Link Jarrett, who's the head coach there at Florida State. He's opted to play the first game today instead of the nightcap, which interesting. So, any of you Alabama baseball fans that y'all are interested in watching Stetson versus Florida State starting here at 11 o'clock, it's going to be very interesting to watch. And I'll get to Florida State, potentially Alabama. Who is Florida State going to start? Because Stetson and Florida State matched up in the year. Stetson's got him. They split with him during the year. Stetson beat him 10-5. So Florida State knows that this, again, if you talk about Cinderella teams and March Madness in basketball, like if you were going to your high seeds to go deep, make a run that are crazy, Stetson's one of those teams that scary 4 seed, but that can beat a good Florida State team. So it'll be interesting to see if Florida State starts their ace, Jamie Arnold, or goes to Carson Dorsey, who's their typical Saturday guy. Why I say all that? Obviously, it wouldn't surprise me if FSU says, we got to get game one, just like everybody says. You got to get the first game. So it'll be interesting to see if they start Jamie Arnold or Carson Dorsey.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Alabama is not. I'm going to be very clear. 42-15, Florida State's record, made a deep run in the ACC tournament. They are a very good team. Like I talked about, Jamie Arnold, sophomore left-hander. All of their top-tier arms are left-handed pitchers, and they have a very offensive club. They've got 6 guys batting over 300 there. They've got 4 guys with over and multiple over 10 home runs, highlighted by Cam Smith, James Tibbs. It's a very athletic club and overall good team. But good grief, that's every SEC team. So I would tell you, Alabama's not going to be overwhelmed by Florida State. It all comes down to, as you mentioned, Greg Ferrun's going to start against Central Florida. Let's make the assumption they win that game. And I think that they're going to start Ben Hess. Alabama starts Ben Hess. Again, Ben Hess has been a wild card for Alabama his entire career, but the reality is he's got the best stuff. And I'll be honest with you, if you ask Coach Jason Jackson and Coach Rob Vaughn, he's slowly gotten better as the year has progressed.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the guy that, you know what, you saw him pitch against LSU. It was a phenomenal performance, 7 innings. He's the best talented arm. He can locate his fastball, and then he has his off-speed working. I don't care who's matching up with him. If he can do that, they absolutely have a chance to play Florida State.
David, the SEC tournament once again was terrific. No rain this year, and we know how good the SEC is, and it's about to get better with Texas and Oklahoma coming in. But 14 teams played baseball this season in the SEC. 11 of them made it to NCAA regionals. Your reaction to that, it's phenomenal.
It really is. We talk about flexing your muscles from the SEC, and ACC is right behind the SEC. But what the SEC has that the ACC doesn't is just depth all the way from top to bottom. And again, I'll say it again. Coach Rob Vaughn talked about, hey, they're the path to Omaha for Alabama they will not see an SEC team. Even let's just say they won the regional. They got to go to Oklahoma, which again Oklahoma would be in next year in the SEC. But it just goes to show you there's just such elite talent, elite arms. And what I've seen change from my time and playing and coaching is just, the scouting reports, the analytics, the overall information on these types of players. I mean, this isn't hearsay talking to your assistant coaches getting somewhat of a scouting report. This is really good reporting, and everybody has a good analysis on each team. And it just really says a lot. Again, you make a funny point. The SEC tournament didn't have any rain, didn't get held up at all. That's very uncommon. And I think next year is going to be really fun to see as Oklahoma and Texas enter I don't know the path of how the SEC tournament is going to play out long term, but next year for sure, no matter what anybody's record is what I've heard is every single team, no matter record, will go to the SEC tournament. Now it will be same type of setup where it's a playing game, where it's a one game win, and then you get into the double elimination tournament. But I like that. I think that's very good, and I think that's what the commissioner, Greg Sankey, wanted to see, and a lot of the coaches see. All these teams are getting beat up in SEC play and have to play each other. Give these teams that are on the bubble a shot to make a run, even if it's a playing game. And I like that. I like that format, and plus it's good for the city of Hoover and every single team to get that feel of playing there, getting that experience of somewhat right before postseason play. And you saw teams like LSU, South Carolina make a massive run when, if you had limited the play or limited the teams that you allow, LSU and South Carolina are in a completely different picture.
David, do you think the SEC with 11 teams in regionals is the favorite to win the College World Series again, coming from the SEC, regardless of which team? You think the SEC wins another title?
If history wants to repeat itself, yes. You see the last three winners have been SEC teams, and you've seen all SEC teams that have made a run in Omaha are teams that go deep. And SEC teams are equipped to play really well in tournament type of brackets, because the reality is every single team, regardless of the SEC, has some top tier arms. But as well as I do is your top tier arms can only go 1, 2, 3, and then you've got to have some depth of other arms to get you through a loser's bracket, or to piece one together if you're one of your aces doesn't have their outing, and then you got to find a way to grind out a win using 3 or 4 very good arms, and the SEC has that. So again, I think that's really where SEC just takes another echelon of knowing that they really are better from the standpoint of just overall depth of arms, and the hitters see that every single night, so they're not overwhelmed by any other conference.
David Kindred with us, breaking it down. All right, getting back to Alabama before we close it out. I said, do you think they've got, a chance to win? Ultimately, predict the regional. Who do you think comes out of the Tallahassee regional? Is it Alabama? Is it Florida State? Is it, a shocker in UCF for Stetson? Ultimately, who do you think wins this weekend down in Tallahassee?
Obviously the favorite's got to be the home team. Florida State coming in. They're playing 27-4 at home. And that's where my last regional, my last year in 2011, we went down to Florida State, and they just play really well at home. I think it's going to be really hard for Alabama to get out of this regional. Now it's doable. I think the favorite's clearly got to be Florida State in protecting home field. They've earned that. But I will say, Alabama being the 2 seed, they've got the type of hitters. Gage Miller has kind of cooled off from where he was red hot. There's a lot of question marks offensively for Alabama. Will Hoda has been one of those middle lineup guys, and I think you're probably going to see him bottom of the half lineup. Second base as well as one of those was going to be Bryce Evelyn or combination of Max Grant. I feel like Florida State's the favorite here. Hey, have me come on. I'd love to talk on the show again. I know you would. On the weekend, but I would talk about it after today's game. It'll make me feel a whole lot better, giving you a great answer. But I got to believe Florida State's the favorite. But I'm never going to count out Alabama. They've definitely got the athleticism and the ability to win a regional.
And what does it say about Rob Vaughn? And this is the first time Alabama's gone to back-to-back regionals since 2013, 2014, so 10 years. He came in here as a first-year coach. Yes, Alabama had a really good team last year, but they had all this stuff happen with Brad Bohannon. They made it, though. They won a regional. At home, they went to Wake Forest. The Winston-Salem Regional came within a win of the World Series, but a lot of guys left from that team. A lot of guys graduated or ran out of eligibility. Some hit the portal. He had to come in here, had to piece together a roster, and to get a team that was very competitive in the SEC, qualify for the SEC tournament, and make a regional. Been a pretty good first season. Would you agree?
I think it's been a very good first season for Coach Vaughn. Again, this is, you've had him on plenty of times, and you've gotten some good insight from him. And I think the thing that, for me, playing here, coaching here, and I think the thing for Alabama baseball, the thing that you can control is hopefully getting a coach that wants to be here long term. And I get that impression for Rob Vaughn, and I think that was a very important question, probably behind closed doors. When he was Greg Byrne was talking to Rob Vaughn, is, hey, is this somewhere you really want to be? Because that's really been the Achilles heel for Alabama baseball, is what you can control, is consistency at head coach ever since, outside of Mitch Gaspard walking out, or being, walking out in 2016. It's been consistency head coach. We know all the other factors that lie into what got Alabama baseball behind as far as scholarships and all that other stuff. But what they can control is long-term consistency. And I think that they've got that with Rob Vaughn, young, upcoming coach, and I think he's got a lot of high energy. I think he connects well with these type of players. So I think they got a good one. Alabama's got a good one moving forward, hopefully for the long term.
Great stuff as always, David. We appreciate it. If people want to give you a follow on X, tell them how they can do it.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter. You check out Gary Harris. Obviously, if you're all the listeners on his end, just he's putting my handle on there. Love to, like Gary said earlier, doing more work with the SEC network. I don't know if I'm doing any postseason games as of right now, but moving forward, been fun being on doing color analyst for the SEC network. You can find me there, but yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DKindred113.
Great stuff. Thanks, David.
Gary, thanks for having me on again.
You betcha. 1022, the YMCA of Tuscaloosa. The Y is ready when you're ready for the Y. It's as simple as that. 2300 13th Street downtown. Personal training, fitness classes. They'll help you with your child care, nutritional advice, great facility, great community of people. Everything is there in place. All that's missing is you. If you want to get on the road to better health and wellness, the YMCA of Tuscaloosa can help you. And Jeff Knox, the CEO, the entire staff, really friendly, courteous. It's not one of these gyms where anybody's going to try to be intimidating, or you'll be comfortable right away, and you'll make some new friends too. I should know. I've been a member for over 20 years. The YMCA of Tuscaloosa, 2300 13th Street. Get by and see them. Let them give you a tour and join.
Helping you navigate the store so you can find the perfect gift. Share a piece of the American spirit with him this Father's Day. Boot Barn. Unwrap the West.
If you haven't already, you've got to try Tuscaloosa's unique breakfast, brunch, and lunch concept. Brick and Spoon, downtown Tuscaloosa at Timerson Square. It's fresh food with a Cajun flair featuring a full bar with build-your-own Bloody Marys and mimosas. Open daily, 7 a.m. until 2 p.m. Available for after-hours.
VIN number 3KPF5480X RE771137. Julio Jones Kia at 4301 Greensboro Avenue, Tuscaloosa, or 24/7 at buyfromjulio.com.
Tuscaloosa's Old Colony Golf Course is an 18-hole championship layout designed by 1976 U.S. Open champion Jerry Pate. Director of Golf John Gray and fitting specialist Bob Montgomery are PGA certified. Mike Shivitz is the head professional and director of the Tuscaloosa Junior Golf Program. Call today to secure a tee time at the Tuscaloosa Championship Golf Course. Everyone can play. 205-562-3201. Old Colony is operated by Para.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A big warm-up today. The sky partly to mostly sunny, the high 89. Clouds move in tonight, the chance of a few showers, the low 69. Tomorrow, occasionally cloudy. A few showers and thunderstorms are likely during the day, the high at 83. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 78 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Find Tide on Twitter at Tide109 to keep up with show announcements, guests, and our reporters in the field.
Oh, yeah. Lover Boy. Some good weekend music here on the Gary Harris Show. Working for the weekend. It's 10:25. Welcome back in. We got Ryan Fowler coming up in the next segment, and we don't have a phone call, so we're going to talk to Ryan for a while. So let's run a little bit of Patrick Murphy coming in yesterday following the game, because he made it. He and Bailey Dowling and Caleb Beaver were there, but Murphy made an opening statement, and as usual, man, the guy was positive. Justin's going to play that for you right now.
Thanks a lot. Hey, like I said the other day, there's no such thing as a bad day at the College World Series. So it was a well-played game. They had an opportunity to win it.
Dowling and Beaver. Okay, Dowling and Beaver talk about the game a little bit too after Murphy. So we'll get through both of those, and then we'll come back. So it'll be about 3 or 4 minutes.
College World Series. So it was a well-played game. They had an opportunity to win it. They did it. One good swing. So both sides played well. Just a really good college softball game. And I think everybody on our team, and you guys probably who have covered softball before, knows that the 3 key things in a high-level game is a great start, great defense, and then a key hit. And they got the key hit. So kudos to the young lady. And, hey, we're going to look forward to tomorrow. We've been here before. Our backs have been against the wall, so it's no big deal. And we're going to fight like hell.
All right, we'll get to questions for players. Okay, we go front row left here.
Katie Wyndham from Bama Central. For both players, just kind of bouncing off what Murph just said. Obviously losing is not what you want, but this is kind of a position y'all are familiar with. Lost the first game of Supers. Kind of how is this something that y'all can, or maybe that are used to and can build off of with your backs against the wall?
Like Murph said, we've been here before, and I think it allows us to play even more free than we already are, honestly, because, nobody thinks that or thought that we were even going to get here, and here we are. And at this point, we're just having fun. We're ready to win, so come out tomorrow and go get them.
Same thing. I mean, like she said, like Murph said, we've been here before. We were in this situation last weekend, and, we came back the next day fighting, and we know how to play with our backs against the wall. There's a lot of stuff on the line, and at the end of the day, the pressure's on them because, again, we weren't even supposed to be here. And so going off that, we can play free, enjoy the game, and see what happens.
All right, good stuff there from the players and Murph. Basically, they're right. They have had their back up against the wall, and they'll have it up against the wall tonight against Duke. We'll see if they can survive and play another day. Because the good news is if they win tonight, they're there until Sunday. So they won't play again until Sunday. All right, it's 10:28. We're going to get to the break, and we're going to come back with Ryan Fowler right here from the game on Tide 100.9 FM. He spent the week down at Sandell.
MartyPets.com/deal or text DEAL to 511-511. Text DEAL to 511-511. All dogs are unique. Your dog's results can and will vary. Message and data rates may apply.
As much as Innisfree has evolved, it will always be that place to escape and have a good time. Whether it's for a game day weekend, to reminisce on college days, or to create new memories, if you're looking for a good time, there's only one thing to do. Head to the Free at 1925 University Boulevard. And don't forget about the Lucky Lunch Meat and 3 special, Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. Get a meat and 3 vegetables for just $8.49. Or for a lighter appetite, try the Lucky Lunch soup, salad, or sandwich combo. I'll see you at the Free. If you haven't already, you've got to try Tuscaloosa's unique breakfast, brunch, and lunch concept. Brick and Spoon, downtown Tuscaloosa at Timerson Square. It's fresh food with a Cajun flair featuring a full bar with build-your-own Bloody Marys and mimosas. Open daily, 7 a.m. until 2 p.m. Available for after-hours events, rehearsal dinners, receptions, and birthdays. They offer brunch and lunch catering. Call Brick Brick and Spoon at 205-345-5551 for more information. Life doesn't wait for when your finances are in perfect order. It just happens. But no matter what surprises come your way, Alabama Credit Union will be here to help make it affordable with great personal loans, mortgages, and auto loans. They offer an easy application process and fast decisions so you can stay focused on feeling good about whatever life brings your way. Alabama Credit Union will be here to help make it affordable with great personal loans, mortgages, and auto loans. Alabama Credit Union, loans for real life. Visit alabamacu.com to learn more. Some rules and restrictions apply. See if you're eligible for membership, then join today and feel good about your money.
365, 24/7. You'll find road and utility crews, tow trucks, law enforcement, and first responders working along Alabama's roadway.
We're making improvements and helping our communities stay connected.
We're working hard to make sure you're safe on the road. Now we need your help to make sure we're safe too.
Alabama's move over law requires you to move over a lane when you see flashing lights on the roadside. And if you can't safely move over, please slow down.
Visit DriveSafeAlabama.org, brought to you by the Alabama Department of Transportation, Alabama Broadcasters Association, and this station.
Covering University of Alabama sports, as well as the national and local scene as well. The Gary Harris Show, only on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Tried to amend my carnivorous habits. Made an nearly 70 days.
Oh, yeah, I love it. TGIF edition of the Gary Harris Show rolls on with that great week of music, and Ryan Fowler requested some Little Jimmy Buffett. Why not? He loves cheeseburgers, and he's been in paradise the last few days. Yeah, that's right. I consider Sandestin, the beautiful Northwest Florida area, paradise. Ryan was there for the SEC meetings for his show, The Game, on Tide 100.9 FM and 1230 AM WTBC from 2 to 6 every weekday afternoon. And he joins us now to discuss the news coming out of SEC meetings with Texas and Oklahoma coming in. Hey, good morning, Ryan.
Hey, good morning, Gary. I know you and I are kind of Orange Beach, Gulf Shores people, and the way that this has exploded here in Sandestin, Miramar Beach, 30A, I'm going to continue to be Gulf Shores, Orange Beach people. It is, Gary, okay, you and I, we sometimes we slip down to the beach here in the dead time, and I think that kind of spoils us a little bit. It kind of sets us up for some false expectations. This is Memorial Day week. I get it. I get a lot of people take off. It has been unreal at the wait times for restaurants. I mean, I'm not talking an hour and a half, hour and 30 minutes. We're talking 3 hours for a wait time.
Jeez.
Yeah, it is. I mean, packed. The cell phone signals down here have been crashing because there's so many people here. I mean, it's like a game day in Tuscaloosa at Bryant City Stadium. It's that type of atmosphere. It is packed to the gills. And I have not been to Destin in a few years. I think I came down here pre-COVID. I've covered this event, 8 or 9 times, but I haven't been down since COVID. And just the amount of growth, this area has exploded for growth. But too many people for me. Give me Fort Morgan. Give me Gulf Shores. Give me Orange Beach. I love it. It's beautiful, but too many folks for me.
Yeah, and I hope that doesn't happen to the Alabama side of things, because you're right. What happened with the Destin area and is that it just, used to be much like Gulf Shores and Orange Beach and Fort Morgan. It was still kind of the southeast little hideaway. It's people from Alabama and Mississippi and the Carolinas and Tennessee and Arkansas and Louisiana, maybe some from Texas, and that was about it. Now with all the notoriety that's come to that area and all those big developments, as you said, from Sandestin on down to 30A, it's an international playground now, and you have to deal with that. So I guess that's the one negative. But you covering these meetings, man, and I'm interested in your perspective since you're there. What were some of the storylines? What were some of the topics that caught your attention and that were being discussed? I mean, obviously we're going through a lot of changes in collegiate athletics. Well, I know you've talked about it on your show, but for our audience this morning, what were some of the topics that grabbed your attention?
Yeah, I think there's a couple, and I'll kind of give an Alabama perspective. I'll also give kind of a general perspective. Coming into this thing, and you and I've talked about it many times off the air. I know you talk about it here on the show. There's just so much changes. The way I describe this, if you ever been in a dark room and you've been there for a couple of hours and somebody walks in and turns the lights on and your eyes are still adjusting, that's where we're at in college football. And I think the smartest line of the week, now I'm giving Tennessee credit, which I don't like to do, but Josh Heupel had it. I mean, Josh Heupel came in and said, I came here with questions, and I'm leaving with a lot more questions. He said, because I thought that, we might be able to get some solutions. We thought we might be able to get a sense of direction, and they've not been able to do that. The thing that you've heard here is how do they make up the 20%? Okay, but it's in my head, and I've always done math a little bit different. In my head, you think about $100 million. Okay, if you do 20% on a revenue share, you're down $20 million. If these athletic departments continue to generate revenue, really at this point, only they're making, if they put a patch on a jersey or a patch on a field, or if they go from 8 to 9 conference games, well, if they're generating more revenue, really they're only capturing 80% of that. So they've got to be able to make up that $20 million. So you've got to be able to go above, that $20 million that you kind of like pretended to lose. Now I'm just generically $100 million. It's the salary, the budgets for athletic departments are probably closer to, 150, 170 for most big athletic departments. So that's been a big discussion here. The availability was another discussion, and I'm a little bit mixed on this. It is college football. It's not the NFL. Should we really know the injuries of players? Should we be? Because, we've covered Nick Saban for the last 17 years. We don't really know how Kalen DeBoer is going to be with injuries, telling us exactly if this guy's going to be available. But that was one of the things that was discussed. Now, I do see a positive in the availabilities because you and I, we cover a game and we're expecting a player to play. And when he doesn't play, in the back of your mind, you have to ask yourself, is it an injury or is it some kind of disciplinary issue? Did he miss class? Did he miss curfew? If you have that injury designation, then it almost removes that part of it. So in one way, it kind of protects the student athlete from, things, from us misjudging, because, we do. I mean, we see a player didn't play. What happened? Did he get in the doghouse? And so this kind of clears some of that up. But like I said, I also respect the medical privacy of these players. But they're not professional athletes, but it seems like we're on a crash course there. From an Alabama perspective, I thought Greg Byrne kind of gave that tip about the new possible basketball. And I don't know if it's a facility, if it's a practice facility, because of the financial constraints of college athletics. It just seems like the Coliseum, the new arena, is just not a priority. And maybe I'm wrong, but he did mention that they'll have news coming up in a couple of weeks. And I don't know what that is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a new training facility, if it's going to improvement of the current facility. But he did say that they would have some. But, we used to talk about the arena for recruiting.
Right.
Nowadays, he doesn't need a new arena for recruiting.
He doesn't.
His system is recruiting, and it maybe have the upper advantage. So, I know that a lot of people want the arena. I just don't know financially, building costs, the current economic climate of our country is going to set up, to build that. But hey, Greg Byrne, may pull a rabbit out of his hat. But Kalen DeBoer perspective, it was fun to be in the room prior to Kalen DeBoer, because a lot of the national media, they knew him, but really had never got to know him on that level.
Right.
I had several national members of the media that looked at me and went, wow, you guys have hit the absolute lottery, because he answered the question. Some of the questions he didn't know, and he told you he didn't know. He said, I'm not a guy that's going to overreact, but I'll give you my opinion on what I think it is. And so he shared a lot of the things that we're talking about. He was peppered with, roster limitations, eliminating walk-ons. That's a big discussion down here of possibly just getting to 85 and that's it. Most coaches that we heard did not like that, because think about the walk-on program at Alabama, how, Rashad Johnson, Levi Wallace, Will Lowry, there's been others that have come in, especially from a specialist standpoint, punters, kickers, snappers, that have made a significant impact. Is that something that you really want to eliminate? And then you talk about practice quality of players. When you invite a walk-on and, you give your other team a pretty good quality look. So, but just Matt, my overall would have probably be on around Kalen DeBoer, how the national media, because really they never brag on Alabama. At least they didn't when Nick Saban was here. I mean, I never heard too many compliments from, Alabama, but talked with several national guys that were just like, this guy's sharp. I mean, he is fun to listen to. And like I said, I used one phrase. He looked at me and this national guy and goes, man, you guys hit the media lottery, because not only did he do his media availability, they had a little breakout session. He went another 30 minutes just out in the hallway talking. So, that's going to be fun for a lot of us that cover, and it's going to be fun for the fans, because we are the conduit that delivers that news to the fans.
Wow. Great stuff, Ryan. Hey, I want to ask you about Oklahoma and Texas, because, in the fall they're in the league, but this was the first time for them to attend the meetings. of course, Venables and Sark, the head coaches. But Joe Castiglione and Chris Del Conte, the ADs, made a little bit of news. And I talked with somebody else that's down there, and I'm interested in your perspective. And this person told me, said, listen, he didn't take it in a bad way, but he said they kind of walked in here like they own the joint. And, and weren't shy right away about, talking with reporters and describing the Red River rivalry as the best rivalry in college football. And that, they weren't going to take a back seat and they expected to compete for championships right off the bat. And they should. These are two great athletic programs. But did you get that vibe at all that Oklahoma and Texas were not only, excited about being in the league, but coming in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder?
Well, in Texas, that's what you expect. I mean, I know we have callers who call in and participate in my show and your show and other shows that kind of represent that fan base. And I'm not taking shots at them. I'm just telling you, I was with a group of Texas A&M reporters, and you should hear them talk because they know a lot more about Texas and Oklahoma than I do, right? Their ego, yeah, I mean, I know that. I know what I've heard. But kind of seeing it, he said, they're kind of walking in a little gentle. Now, he called this gentle.
Okay.
He said, I promise you, give me a year.
So it's going to get worse.
2 years. No. That's what he was saying. He said, I promise you, they've never been a part of a conference that they didn't fail, right? That a conference didn't hurt itself because of Texas. He said, Give it a year, give it 2 years. He said, you don't understand the high maintenance. And I just, like I said, I was part of this Texas A&M conversation. They were like taking side bets. Would it be 1 year or 2 years that Texas would have the SEC flipped up on its head? He said, right now, it seems like you guys are a perfect group, a lot of chemistry between the coaches, a lot of interacting. He said, wait till Texas comes to town, because he said they try to throw their money and their power away, and they try to act like the king. And I think you have to remind them the reason you're here is because of your conference did not make it to the level. Yeah, it's still going to be there, but it's not to the level that Big 12 once was. So you had to bow and you had to move to other neighborhood. You had to move to another neighborhood because you destroyed your neighborhood. So don't bring that crap over here and try to hurt the SEC. So, yeah, I would agree with that. Talking about the Red River, it used to be called the shootout. Now it's called the rivalry because of, political correctness. So it's a unique world that we live in. But, so Texas and Texas A&M, I'm going to be curious to see where this one fires up, because these folks, like in-state rivalries, to me, they have a little different meaning. Unlike, Michigan, Ohio State, you go back to your state, I go back to my state. Oklahoma, Texas, I know it's very close geographically, but you still live in a different state. Texas A&M, I mean, I think those are good for the game of college football. I think it's good for the SEC. But I can see where Texas had a little ego, a little bit, and kind of seeing, I mean, trust me, they're not bashful about telling you how much money they got, and they've got a ton. And that's why you heard Sark come out with a comment about fine us, because money to them is not the same as money to you and I and maybe some of the other schools. And that's Sark did nail it. I forgot how great Sark was.
Yeah, he's good.
Press conference.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I mean, he was probably the walk away going, he nailed it. I mean, he had some really, really good lines, and but I'm not really sure. I would buy stock in him. I'd buy stock in Texas simply because of the money they're going to be able to spend their way to the top. But if you look at Sark, I mean, he nailed the press conference. I thought he was just brilliant. And, we very limited when he was in Tuscaloosa, assistant coach, talking to the media. We had him a couple times a year. But he was great. If anybody, wants to go back and listen to a lot of content, pull that somewhere up and just listen to Sark and the audio, because I think you'll walk away with a very positive message.
You did a good job of describing DeBoer's first appearance there. For so long, Nick Saban has been the man. Really, even before he got to Alabama, his 5 years at LSU, he was one of the coaches that people turn to at the SEC meetings. Not there this year. I think a lot of people are looking for kind of who's going to become that guy. Kirby Smart's done a great job on the field at Georgia. I don't know, though, that he wants that role. Saban would always come out, as we've talked about, you and I, he had a message every time he got in front of the media. And I think the thing that he had a knack for was looking at it for the good of the game, for what's good for college football, not just for Alabama. Do you sense that there's a coach ready to kind of take over that role or not?
And just to add to what you said, Kirby Smart, we didn't hear him praise Nick Saban too much when they were going toe-to-toe. Rightfully so. I understand why. But he made some really good comments about Coach Saban.
I heard him, yeah.
Yes, talking about how he's in that room and how really he said, his Alabama glasses away and just, really focuses on the betterment of college football and had so many different messages. Now, I will tell you, post-meeting, Lane Kiffin said that Kirby Smart kind of took the bull by the horns, that he was kind of the elder statesman in that room from a national championship perspective. But, he's also been trained by Coach Saban. So, but I thought it was nice to hear Kirby Smart, throw some really nice, praise toward, Coach Saban. But Lane Kiffin said that Kirby Smart in the room was the coach that was the most vocal. I don't know exactly, they really didn't reveal what it was vocal about other than he kind of took charge of a lot of that. But I think another important guy that I think that is important to kind of look at all these transitions is David Cutcliffe. David Cutcliffe is the liaison between the SEC coaches and the commissioner. So the SEC office employs David Cutcliffe to be the liaison with the football coaches. So if the football coaches have a complaint or something they want to discuss, David Cutcliffe, just think about the power of a David Cutcliffe. You and I have been around him. He's not soft-spoken, but he's just very level-headed. His voice carries a lot of weight because of the experience that he's been in. Think about how valuable he is to that room because there is a void without Nick Saban there. And I even thought maybe, because he is an employee of the University of Alabama, that in some way they could incorporate him back in. But he was definitely missed here in Miramar Beach.
Ryan Fowler with us for a couple of more minutes. Of course, catch him daily, 2 to 6 on the game here on Tide 100.9 FM and 1230 AM WTBC. I want to ask you about, on the basketball side, John Calipari making the move from Kentucky to Arkansas. He's kind of he's one of these bigger-than-life personalities. But when you talk to media people, a lot of people don't like this guy. And, did you see him? Was he making the rounds media-wise? That would be, going from Kentucky to Arkansas would be like leaving Alabama and going to another job in this league for football. I mean, we saw Bill Curry do it one time. It'd be huge news. What was anything coming out from Coach Calipari that caught your attention, or how he is being, how is he perceived by the media now?
Well, and let me say this. He did not do a media general press conference where they go in a room and you actually have TV cameras. So
which I find disappointing, really.
Yeah, and there's a lot of coaches, and let me also say this because a lot of people say, well, why aren't you not talking about Nate Oates? Nate Oates did not do a media availability, and let me give a rebuttal to that. Mark Sears' news was expected that day. I just don't think he wanted to jump in front of that. I think he wanted to wait, respect the process, allow that to play out. At some point, maybe they'll do a media availability. But and that's what I think it was. Now, that's just me guessing. Nobody told me that. But for Cal, he did talk with the media, but it was more of a kind of just a group around of people. And I kind of got, sometimes if you don't see a person coming and you're not able to get close and you get kind of pushed to the back, it's very difficult to hear. So I was able to hear some of it, but not a lot. And like I said, there was no TV cameras that were there. So unless someone videotaped it with their phone, then they might have threw it up on the the YouTube channel to be able to see exactly what he said. But he did a availability, and I know Kentucky did an availability, and it was just watch that rivalry because there's some bitterness there between him and Kentucky and between Kentucky and him because it seems like that this might be another little rivalry that continues to kind of be added to the fuel of the fire. And I think rivalries are good, whether it's college basketball or soccer or football or whatever. It's, so keep your eye on that because Arkansas, and it was a little disappointing talking to Arkansas media, how quickly they have moved on to Arkansas basketball.
Right.
I mean, that was the part. It's like, guys, there is a football season. I think we probably watched, a few coaches make their last appearance here, probably Sam Pittman. It really hard. I like Billy Napier. I talked with Billy Napier. I had just a quick interview with him and, talking about Coach Saban, talked about his time in Tuscaloosa, but you can see the amount of stress. The other guy that I thought was stressed, but he always kind of has this look. Hugh Freeze did not do any media availability. He did one interview.
I noticed that.
Yeah, that was out in like the ESPN SEC network folks. I didn't see him do anything else, but he looked like he just had a stress look about it. And I think he understands, he's got to get it back on track. The first year honeymoon that they thought that maybe 7-8 wins, you have a losing season that year, number one. The expectations, according to Vegas, is about 7 wins. I've seen it as low as 6.5 for the projection. That won't work in Lee County. We know that they've got a quick, trigger when you talk about trying to pull it on a coach. Not saying they will with Hugh Freeze, but you can see that there's a lot of stress on his body language, and choosing not to come to the media room also probably added to that.
All right, Ryan, I'm getting up against. I'm enjoying this so much. I've asked Justin to do something. I know we don't like to do this, but we're going to double up the break so we get it, guys. I got a couple more for you. Finally, Sankey. I mean, with where the NCAA is at right now, and with the SEC being what it is, and his tenure, can't you make the argument that Greg Sankey right now is the most powerful person in college athletics? And I think he seems to carry himself that way. What were your Greg Sankey takeaways at the SEC spring meetings?
Well, he always, he kind of speaks from a standpoint. There's a lot of words, but it's not a lot of content, if that means anything. I mean, I was just listening to him before I jumped on with you, 42 minutes just to go back and make sure I didn't miss anything from the final media availability. But he did this pretty much every day. I've also noticed that they've started to use the word Super League. I don't know if you picked up on that, but they're using it not just from media describing the league, but it's something they're starting to embrace. I mean, they're doing hashtag Super League and all these little things that they're kind of throwing out there. So that's just kind of something. But no, I think he is the most powerful. I know the Big Ten geographically probably checks more boxes than the states, than the SEC. But I mean, when you add the quality that the SEC's been able to add, this is going to be crazy. I guess another part of this is I kind of missed this with Kirby Smart, is he talked about he thinks the undefeateds are, now this was the breakout session outside. I don't think it was in the main room, but he thought undefeateds are a thing of the past. I mean, think about that. Yeah. Just that fabric within ourselves of how we recognize a great season. Mm-hmm. And he said he just doesn't think undefeateds are going to be a part of it. But to answer your first question, yes, I think Greg Sankey is the most powerful person. This league, has so much power. And thankfully that, they've been able to add to those 12 teams to get it to 14, now to 16. And who knows with the ACC, do you possibly add a couple of more teams there? And if that's the case, then you really begin to capture a lot of the power, and you really begin to determine, because, they're waiting on the 8-9 conference game to see if they go there simply based on the playoff structure. They want to get as many teams into this thing as possible, as because it's financially for one. But to hear them kind of use the word Super League and to try to make some decisions, I think it's very important not to get tripped in to adding more conference games if it's not needed. If you already get the, let's say 4 teams, if you think that's your max and you get those 4 teams, then maybe you don't consider it. But I think the 8-9 is back on the table, at least being discussed, which we thought it was kind of on the shelf the last couple of years.
All right. We're going to double up the breaks, but still we're tight on time. But I saved this for the last because I retweeted your post on Joe Namath turning 81. I always am familiar with his birthday because he's born the same year as my mom. So I just put something out on Facebook myself. But what does it say about Joe Namath? You got to keep it quick, that in this era of short attention spans, and, we don't remember players that played in, the early 2000s a lot of times, but still pretty much you can say the name Joe Namath to any sports fan of any age, and they still recognize him.
I think he's a world icon, but I think that from an Alabama perspective, he's one of the all-time greats, but it's post-football that grabbed me about Joe Namath. When Alabama was struggling to build facilities, Joe Namath lended his name and started that golf tournament that helped the fundraising to build some of the weight room, to build some of the facilities, to allow Malmore to raise $240 million. I don't think we realize the role that he played in help rebuilding the tradition that allowed us to go out and get a Nick Saban. That's the part of Joe Namath, the story that needs to be told a little bit more. And that's the ambassador that we've had in Joe Namath.
Well, I bet you'll be telling those stories at 2:00 this afternoon on The Game. Thanks so much, Ryan.
Hey, have a great weekend. Thank you guys so much.
All right, Ryan Fowler with us from the game. Catch him today at 2. Catch T-Town Sports Daily coming up next at 11. Catch the Miller's Edge from noon until 2. All right, that is going to do it for the Gary Harris Show. Hope you have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll talk to you again on Monday. This hour has been brought to you by Patterson Comer, attorneys at law.